Alrighty, so one thing that a lot of fans are truly looking forward to by both John and Dave and exactly what's coming out of Star Wars Legends is all to do with exactly how it's all going to coexist between the Legends and the Disney canon material and how they can really create a balance between the two to really give us a well fleshed out story by John and Dave. This is Mike Zero. Subscribe if you're new and like this video to see future Star Wars updates. I'm also on Twitter at Mike01. I thank you all so very much for that great and kind support. Now that brings us to exactly what's been going on between Disney and Lucasfilm. We know that Bob Iger and the Disney higher-ups have had a lot of trouble with Kathleen Kennedy and a lot of complications with her on the shows The Acolyte and Skeleton Crew and the like, and how that really has been, creating a lot of setbacks, revenue loss from Disney, and just a lot of problematic situations arising, especially with Skeleton Crew, by the way, which is labeled as the most toxic environment under all of Disney's Star Wars history. So looking at where we stand, alright, we have The Acolyte and Skeleton Crew as the two Kathleen Kennedy-driven projects. Everything else is led by John and Dave. However, Bob Iger is trying to, like we talked about a couple of days ago, make a deal with Kathleen Kennedy in exchange for something else. We're going to be learning a little bit more about that in the coming weeks, but in exchange, he wants something to do with her severance deal getting leveled out, and basically what he wants is to initiate a third mystery project by Kathleen Kennedy as an anthology show to cap things off with her. Now, with that being said, what's even all the more interesting about this whole entire scenario is exactly what's going on. So, with creators John and Dave getting ready to expand the roadmap of the franchise, they are also focused on developing new and upcoming shows that will be announced by this April. Now further, it's noticed, of course, by Disney that they recently had to give Kathleen Kennedy another warning over at Lucasfilm for doing something very damaging to one of the upcoming Star Wars shows without authorization from the Disney board. Now this gets tricky. Just recently, Kennedy made the decision to cut out some of John and Dave's fixes for the Acolyte show that they were helping out with for a couple of months. Not all of the material, but a good percentage of what John and Dave actually patched and came to Lucasfilm's aid to help fix. Kennedy's way of justifying this action is that it did not fit the third act of the plot, even though it's not a movie, but the third act of the series plot in the show, and completely shifted things around for a character dubbed as Tara. The Disney board recently gave Kathleen Kennedy a big ultimatum and warned her for even worse things to happen, as they are now dialing back on even more marketing for the Acolyte in order to save revenue, since Kennedy now has to initiate more reshoots for the Acolyte to fill in what she recently deleted. So let me stop right here for 1 second, alright, before we get on to the more involved material. Now, the thing about this that really worries a lot of fans, and especially myself, is whether or not this show is really gonna wreck the momentum of what John and Dave is building, alright? And I can really say this, I don't think it's gonna wreck the momentum for the people that are very well aware about who's in control of what. But for the casual fans that aren't really religiously following who is making each and every show, they may very well believe that the Acolyte and Skeleton Crew are Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni driven projects. And that could be where you get some percentage of the fans falling back on what John and Dave make afterward. So that's the only big problem, is that it's all about which fans know what about the Acolyte and Skeleton Crew. That's why it's great to kind of share things around, guys, use word of mouth, let people know that are unaware who's creating what. So John and Dave, they only helped fix a couple of scenes here and there for the Acolyte and Skeleton Crew, and that's it. That was their only involvement, and even that got sabotaged to an extent by Kathleen Kennedy, no less. And this has caused the board of Disney to jump in, give her a big warning again, another ultimatum, and it's just a cycling, toxic situation all the time with Kathleen Kennedy. This is why they want her out. This is exactly why she is relentless. She does not care what others think, and she just does not care about the lore of this massive franchise, by the way. And it really is just creating a lot of stress on the cast and the crew. And not just that, but it's also hurting the marketing ambitions by Disney for these two Star Wars shows. So anyways, that brings us to the next big segment here of the whole entire scenario. Alright, so this has now forced the higher-ups at Disney to also delay the series by a whole month again, and they are now planning to not get this show released until spring of 24. Originally, the show was supposed to come out in winter of 23, however, now with Disney warning Kennedy of more marketing setbacks, the show may not be promoted as well as it should have, and may very well need it to reach out to enough fans. So, let's just make things clear here. We already know that Kathleen Kennedy said that the Acolyte is going to have a lot of lore that's going to change the overall canon of the prequel trilogy movies. The Leslie Headland written project, along with some other writers as well, is going to basically shift some of the lore against George Lucas's prequels. And that's the thing that I think worries fans even more. You know, we might have to have John and Dave do a re-retcon to kind of undo what Kathleen Kennedy does in these shows. They might just have to do that, which is why I'm not all that worried, because if these retcons become as bad as they might be, there's always a remedy if it's possible, and they could always use that to their advantage. So, this is really just a very complex problem. I can see how tiring it must be for the Disney board to be dealing with Kathleen Kennedy like this every single month, dealing with all of these setbacks and problems and just really not getting any kind of progression. So Skeleton Crew, by the way, is still on for this year. Don't expect it at least until November at the very earliest. We're not going to be getting this thing in, August or anything like that. Way too early. But there's a lot of things being done for Acolyte now. A lot of reshoots, and it's costing Disney so much money. A lot of new sets are being built again, and it just keeps going on and on. And like I say, guys, I think that the Acolyte show really should have fell into the hands of John and Dave, if anything, right? Because this is dealing with all of the mythology of Star Wars. The Jedi, the Sith, the light and the dark, good and evil, stuff like that. And Kathleen Kennedy openly said that she's going to be changing how we view the Sith. And there's a lot of talk that this show is actually going to make the Sith good in the Acolyte, giving us like a good side to them. And I'm not quite sure how a lot of fans are going to respond to that. But anyways, with that being all done and said, drop a comment below, fill me in on what you guys have to say about all of this below in the comments, and if you guys did enjoy the content for today, make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel. I thank you all so very much for the kind support, and I'll catch you guys next time.
From night to moon, we hear them moans again.